Good afternoon. We'll call the meeting to order. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Algonquin Highlands is located on Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. We also acknowledge a historic shared presence of other Indigenous nations throughout the area, and we recognize these original inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. Could I have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda, please? Member Fergus, seconded by Member Rogers.
Moved by Fergus McLaren, seconded by John Rogers. Be it resolved, the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves as circulated the meeting agenda of May 30th, 2025.
All in favor? That's carried. For the purposes of the audience and those that are listening, my name is Liz Danielson and I'm the chair of the committee. I'd like to introduce the members of the committee: John Rogers, public member; Christine Sharp, public member; Sabrina Richards, councillor for Ward 2; and Fergus McLaren, public member for the northern portion of the community. We're also joined by our planner, Sean O'Callaghan, and our chief building official, Greg Moore. Mr. O'Callaghan will provide a brief overview of each application, after which the applicant or their agent will have an opportunity to address the committee. Following this, anyone who wishes to speak to the application, whether in support or against, will be given the opportunity to do so. The committee will then discuss the proposal and be given the opportunity to ask questions of both our planner and the applicant. The committee will then vote to grant, refuse, or defer the proposal. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes from April 25th? Members Sharp and Richards.
Moved by Christine Sharp, seconded by Sabrina Richards. Be it resolved, the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves as circulated the meeting minutes of April 25th, 2025.
All in favor? That's carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Member Fergus? On the Betker application? Okay. Because you're a neighbor? Thank you. I think we might have a form that you'll have to sign later on. So into new business. The first application is by Betker for a minor variance on Livingston Lake. And Fergus, you'll have to leave the room. We'll give you a shout when we're ready. Over to you.
Thank you. This property is located at 1081 Milliard Lane. The lands are zoned shoreline residential 2 and designated waterfront in the official plan. The property is approximately 1.84 acres in area with 51.5 meters of frontage on Livingston Lake. Surrounding uses are generally shoreline residential, and the lands are currently developed with a dwelling, a privy, a dock, and 2 sheds. The owner is proposing to construct a 468 square foot dryland boathouse. The proposed dryland boathouse is to be located 12.8 meters from the high water mark. The proposed boathouse will exceed the maximum permitted width of a boathouse of 5.5 meters by 2.43 meters. Staff are not supportive of the proposed minor variance to permit the dryland boathouse, as there is limited planning rationale and there appears to be opportunity to rotate the structure, which would then be constructed in compliance with the township zoning bylaw. So the minor variance being requested is from section 4.2.9F of the zoning bylaw to permit an increase in the maximum width of a boathouse from 5.5 meters to 7.93 meters. Notice of the application was posted on the property, posted on the township website, and circulated to property owners within 60 meters of the subject lands, as well as to the County of Haliburton and the Livingston Lake Association. No letters of objection have been received. One letter of support was received from an adjacent landowner, and staff are recommending refusal of the proposed minor variance.
Questions for Mr. O'Callaghan from committee members? Comments from committee members? I'll get to that.
Okay.
I'm not sure the applicant will be here today. I believe they wrote a letter that was circulated to the committee, but yeah, I don't believe they're in attendance. Yeah.
Any questions or comments for Mr. O'Callaghan at this point in time?
Yes.
Okay.
Just wondering, is the frontage restricted because of the building being called a boathouse as opposed to just an auxiliary kind of storage?
Yes, that is correct. So there was discussion with the applicant on whether they wanted to define the structure as a boathouse or a garage. A garage requires a 30-meter setback from a high water mark, whereas a boathouse has a 0-meter setback requirement. But the issue is that if you're within that 30 meters and it is a boathouse, there's a maximum width
Yes.
that's permitted to minimize the disturbance along the shoreline, which this will exceed.
Yes, a disturbance along the shoreline, but this is set back
Mhm.
quite a ways from the shoreline.
Correct.
And my understanding on the application was that it wouldn't be possible to turn it the other way because that would satisfy everything in terms of the frontage facing the lake. Because in order to get a boat inside, it's not going to work if it's turned the other way. Is that understanding correct?
Uh, That's not my understanding. If the boathouse was oriented in the way that it should be, it would be lengthways, so it'd be a more direct path, whereas,
I think there were some obstructions so that were
Okay.
there that made it difficult to do.
yeah.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions for Mr. O'Callaghan? Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak to the application? Hearing none, you have a motion on the floor.
I don't believe anyone was online either for this one.
Oh, sorry, I
think
should
so.
have asked
Yeah,
that.
Just double checking.
Yeah, there was nothing on the
Okay.
list. So if you could read the resolution and then we'll see if there's a mover and a seconder for it as it stands.
Certainly. So the resolution right now reads, be it resolved, the Committee of Adjustment hereby refuses minor variance application HMV 00125 to seek relief from section 4.2.9F of the zoning bylaw to permit an increase in the maximum width of a boathouse from 5.5 meters to 7.93 meters for the purpose of constructing a 468 square foot dryland boathouse for the following reasons. The variance is not minor in nature. Two, it is not desirable for the appropriate development or use of land. The general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw is not maintained. The general intent and purpose of the official plan is not maintained. The dryland boathouse can be constructed in a manner that would comply with the zoning bylaw. And finally, there's no justification for the proposed increase width of a dryland boathouse.
Could I have a mover and a seconder for the resolution? Moved by Member Rogers, seconded by Member Richards.
Can I just put on record that I'm not in agreement with this?
Well, you can vote against the resolution.
Okay.
Member Rogers?
I just, it's a difficult one. The site's already been cleared, so when you go there, you can see where they're intending to do it. But I'm glad you answered that question, Sean, about why they didn't have the discussion between discussing it as a garage rather than a boathouse. And therefore, I agree with your summary and why we should be refusing it.
So if you want to take a recorded vote,
Sure. So the motion is for refusal of the application. It was moved by John Rogers and seconded by Sabrina Richards. So I'll just go in order of my list that I have here. So Member Rogers,
Yeah, in favor.
Sabrina Richards,
is that in favor?
Christine Sharp,
No.
and Liz Danielson.
I agree. So that application has been denied and I'm sure that the applicant has the opportunity to come back to you with an alternate proposal.
Well, now that the application's been denied, it would have to be a new application.
New application. Okay. If you could invite Mr. McLaren back. So the next item for business is an application by Martel on Coagama Lake for a dock and a boathouse, I believe.
Yes, thank you. This property is located at 4011 Coagama Lake Road. The lands are zoned shoreline residential and environmental protection and designated waterfront in the official plan. The property is approximately 2.96 acres in area with 315 meters of frontage on Coagama Lake. Surrounding uses are generally shoreline residential, and the lands are currently developed with a dwelling, detached garage, and a dock. The owner is proposing to construct a 649 square foot boathouse. The proposed boathouse will project into the water 19.04 meters from shore. And the proposed dock attached to the boathouse will project into the water 19.74 meters from shore. The water levels in front of the subject lands are quite shallow, and the requested projection will allow for the safe docking of a vessel with adequate water depth. The owner is also proposing to construct a 2,512 square foot detached garage. The proposed garage is proposed to be 23.55 meters from the high water mark at its closest point. The following variances are being requested. One from section 4.2.9E of the zoning bylaw to permit an increase in the maximum projection of a dock from 15 meters to 19.74 meters. Two, from section 4.2.9F of the zoning bylaw to permit an increase in the maximum projection of a boathouse from 8 meters to 19.04 meters. And finally, from section 4.2.8 of the zoning bylaw to reduce the minimum setback to the high water mark from 30 meters to 23.55 meters for a 2,512 square foot one-story detached garage. Notice of the application was posted on the property, posted on the township website, and circulated to property owners within 60 meters of the subject lands, as well as to the County of Halliburton and to the Coagama Lake Property Owners Association. Several letters of objection have been received and circulated to the committee and applicant. Staff were recommending approval of the proposed minor variance, but given the comments that have been received, we are recommending now deferral of the application to further investigate the concerns that have been raised. So that will be staff's recommendation now.
Okay, any questions for Sean at this point in time? Member Rogers?
Madam Chair, with the request by staff to defer, in my view, it would be best that we actually move, and I would be prepared to move for deferral now so that we don't, I know people are here and a lot of folks are here and very interested in this, but there's so much information. We had some very well-written letters of objection. We had a good planning report in favor of this application. But there are a couple of things, and I've told Sean this in an email, that I think two things. One is there should be an EIS in this, even though it's not within the environmental zone or its environmental designation, but I still think what's been raised would indicate to me that an EIS would probably be advisable. That's up to the applicant to make that decision. The second thing is there were a number of suggestions that maybe Ministry of Natural Resources should be involved in this, and I think that's up to us as a municipality to request comments from Ministry of Natural Resources. So I would move now that we defer the application subject to receiving some further information from Ministry of Natural Resources and potentially an EIS.
I don't disagree that there may be requirements for an environmental assessment. I also have concerns about navigation and how that's impacted. But I do believe that the resolution would and should come after we've had an opportunity to discuss the application. We've got people here. Notification has been given that we are going to have a discussion and be considering this application today. And I don't want to take away the opportunity for people to speak to the application. But I would look to other members of council I do believe that we should give members present the opportunity to speak. And I don't know, do we have people that are online waiting to speak as well? Thoughts from
I agree.
Seems reasonable.
Member Richards? So I understand that the applicant here is here, Melissa Markham. If you'd like to come forward and speak to the committee. I'd have to make sure that is the microphone turned on. So that's how you feel about your application.
All right, good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Melissa Markham Planning, 1025 Rebecca Lane, Huntsville, Ontario, P1H2J6. I had provided a presentation for the township and hopefully the committee had had a chance to take a look at that, and that's what's on the screen here before you. I'm here today on behalf of the owners of 4011 Quagga Lake Road, and the application before you today, as you heard, is related to a detached garage and the construction of a dock and boathouse. Prior to making this application, the owners did pre-consult with the township, and the owners are in attendance here today, and I believe they would like to speak after myself. The owners and I read the staff report that was prepared for the meeting. I don't believe we were aware of the deferral that was being recommended today, but we did read the staff report recommending consideration at today's meeting, and we were in support of the recommendation of that report to approve the application. Next slide, please. The purpose of the application is to facilitate the development of a boathouse and dock having a greater projection from the high water mark than permitted and a reduced front yard setback to a detached garage, which is less than that permitted in the bylaw. The owners are proposing to replace the existing dwelling and maintain the required setback, and the garage is also proposed in a new location having a larger footprint. Due to the shallow depth of the lot, a proposed reduced setback to the lake is contemplated through the application. In addition to the on-land development, a dock and boathouse are also proposed in the area of an existing dock. The shoreline of the subject lands, as you heard, is shallow, and a portion of the area is identified as environmental protection. In order to construct the shoreline structures accessible for boating and recreational uses, the structures are proposed having a greater projection into the lake than permitted. Due to the configuration of the subject property, the proposed development has been located in the most appropriate location on the lands. The proposed development will maintain and exceed the required side yard setbacks for the dock and boathouse, and lot coverage is well below that which is permitted. Next slide, please. As you heard, the following relief is requested: to project a dock greater from the high water mark, the boathouse, and a reduced setback to the detached garage. Next slide, please. The relief requested relates to the configuration of the lot and the water depth. As you can see in the aerial photo, the subject lands are peninsula shaped. As the lands are peninsula shaped, almost all of the setbacks where development is proposed are deemed to be the front yard. There is a very small portion of the property which there is an interior side yard setback. The subject lands are well vegetated. Next slide, please. The surrounding area, as you heard, is predominantly characterized by residential uses developed with detached dwellings, accessory, and shoreline structures. The proposed development will allow for development which is in character with the surrounding area in regards to use. No additional uses are being requested through the application. Next slide, please. So with regards to a minor variance application, there are 4 tests, and this was put out in my planning justification report submitted with the application that you have before you. Is the application minor? So when considering whether an application is minor, consideration has been given to any anticipated impacts and the relief required. The application will permit the development of a detached garage and dock and boathouse. Once again, the side yard setbacks are being met to ensure no impact on adjacent properties. The reduced setback to a detached garage, once again, is due to the lot configuration, where the majority of the subject lands are within the 30-meter setback to the lake. The detached garage has been located in the most appropriate location, and only a portion of the building is within the required setback. All the lands are well buffered from the shore with an existing vegetated buffer. The projection of the dock and boathouse is required due to the water depth along the frontage of the lands. An increase in projection is requested in the location, and the structures have been identified by township staff as outside of the EP lands. And this, once again, is in an area where a dock is currently located. The extension of the dock and boathouse beyond that which is permitted is minor, and no impacts are anticipated with the increase in projection. While the surrounding property has a lot area and shoreline frontage, which is much greater than the surrounding properties, the peninsula configuration of the lands does not provide for a buildable envelope to accommodate the dwelling and the detached garage outside of the 30-meter setback. The reduction in setback to the detached garage is not anticipated to have any impact on surrounding properties, as the lands in front of the building will be maintained in a natural state. Is the application desirable for the appropriate development of the lands? The proposal is a dock and boathouse and a detached garage. The variances requested are to improve the functionality of the lands. The proposed development is in keeping with development on surrounding properties, and it will maintain the existing character of the area and residential use. Once again, the dock and boathouse have been located in an area outside of any environmental features, which is where an existing dock is located. The increase in projection of the dock and boathouse is desirable, and it's an appropriate location given the shallow water depth for boating and swimming. Does it conform to the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? Once again, setbacks are provided to ensure developments located on a property to maintain the character of the area. Visual impact is minimized and hazards are protected. The proposed detached garage has been located to maintain the greatest setback from Kawagama Lake. The development of a dwelling and a detached garage are the only buildings to be constructed on land, and maintaining the greatest setback possible given the configuration. The remainder of the subject property will remain in a natural state. The configuration of the subject lands means that development other than the dwelling redevelopment would require some relief to setback. However, the overall intent and purpose of the bylaw will be met by redeveloping the property with permitted uses. In terms of the fourth test, whether it conforms to the general intent and purpose of the official plan, the official plan permits residential development in the waterfront. The official plan encourages protection of the shoreline with restrictions on the extent of shoreline activity area. The proposed development will protect the shoreline and conforms with the maximum shoreline area to maintain an appropriate balance between natural shoreline and built form within the waterfront designations. Next slide, please. In advance of today's meeting, I was forwarded 10 letters of objection to the application. We've reviewed these letters and would like to provide a response to some of the comments that were provided. The first was with regards to the environmental impact. As I mentioned, through preliminary discussions with the township, it was confirmed that the proposed location of the boathouse was outside of any EP zone and no environmental reports were required for the application. Next slide, please. Comments were also provided regarding the boathouse and navigational safety and a bubbler. I've provided 2 images on this slide and I would like to refer to each. The image on the left identifies an aerial of the surrounding lands. The dimensions were taken from the Halliburton mapping. The image shows that the area where the boathouse is proposed is approximately 174 meters across, where there are boathouses in the narrow section of the water further down this area, where shore to shore appears to be 65 to 75 meters. In this area of the water, there are boathouses constructed. I did not see any comments provided where there have been any boating issues in this area where, as I said, ranges from 65 to 75 meters, and there is shoreline structures on both sides of this property. Further, a boathouse is a permitted use. The proposed boathouse meets the width and size requirements of the bylaw. Relief is sought to project the boathouse, which from a navigational perspective is only 4 meters beyond that, which would be permitted as of right for a dock, which would comply. That's 13 additional feet. The image on the right side is provided to identify why the location was selected for the boathouse. The area to the south would be within the EP zone, and any location farther to the north would be located in much shallower water, as shown in the aerial. Next slide, please. An additional comments were provided regarding the character of the area. As provided, the surrounding area is developed with dwellings, accessory structures, and shoreline structures. The uses proposed through the application are permitted on the subject lands. The application proposes a total lot coverage of 2.7%, where 15% is the maximum, and an accessory coverage of 2.5%, where 5 is the maximum. A lot with the same lot area and lot frontage, having a different configuration, could be developed at a much higher coverage than that proposed through this application. As for the comments on the water depth, the owner had a surveyor provide a water depth at the proposed property, and a topographic survey was provided to demonstrate the existing water depth. Next slide, please. As I provided through my presentation, we believe that the application meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act and represents good planning. As I provided, the owners and I are here today to answer any questions that the committee may have. Thank you.
Any questions or comments to Ms. Markham? Member Rogers.
Thank you. Your report's quite detailed, and in it you talk about the PPS, and there's some sections in the PPS that I just would like your thoughts on. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to find where those are. The in 2.5.1, which is on page 4 of your report, subsection G talks about conserving biodiversity and considering the ecological benefits provided by nature. Some of the comments that I've seen are talking about that. And I don't think that's been covered yet. And that's why, as I've said earlier, I think we need to see an EIS. Because if you then go to 4.1.2, which is on page 5, I think of yours. Yeah, page 5. It talks about surface water features. Surface water features are different than what our environmental provisions are within the official plan of the town and township and the county. So again, I think that what the neighbors are asking for is what, and some of the things they've indicated in their letters of objection is that there is going to be some surface water impact, and I need to get a good feel for that. And the last thing is one of the letters of objection had a very good graphic that showed a sight line of one of the very close neighbors. And that sight line is significantly impacted by the extension of the boathouse into the water. I've been involved in former applications, and especially when they used to have the Ontario Municipal Board, where the board actually denied an application because the view of the lake was being blocked, and I'm concerned that that's a situation here. It's not exactly a similar situation, but it is a similar sort of situation. So I'd just like your thoughts on those 3.
Yep, through you, Chair. So in terms of the environmental considerations for the application, as I mentioned, there was consultation with township staff, and the boathouse and dock were located outside of the EP area. And therefore, there was no report that was required as part of the application. And while I'm not an ecologist, typically by projecting a boathouse further into the water and having it further away from the shoreline would be an improvement over any environmental situation by having that located farther away from the water. With regards to the water or the surface water, I once again provide that the boathouse is a permitted use. The size, the width, everything is permitted on this property. The request for the projection is essentially just a landing area to get out to the boathouse. So I don't see that there would be those water quality issues based on the proposed application, once again, also being projected further out. And with regards to sightlines, I will offer that the application is proposing a minimum, I believe it's at least 30-meter setback from the property to the south. So while you're discussing the sightlines, obviously a boathouse that is much closer, which is permitted at the setbacks, if there wasn't the EP zone, in my opinion, would have a much greater impact on the sightline to the neighbors than having this 30 meters away from their property. So that's what I would offer to the committee today.
Any other questions or comments? Member first, Member McLaren.
Thank you. On the site plan, it has proposed cottage. It's showing quite a proposed sunroom, proposed deck, covered porch, et cetera. These things aren't part of this application? Are they coming at a later date or?
Through your chair, no, there's no relief required for the proposed dwelling.
Oh, I see. That's what I wondered.
Yeah, that is correct. The dwelling does comply with the zoning bylaw.
Perfect. Thank you.
Member Sharp.
Just in terms, you mentioned about the water depth being taken, at a specific time. What time, period was that water depth taken that was on your report? What time of year?
Apologies, I don't have the specific dates in front of me. The owners would have that. Yeah.
July and.
So,
May was,
I'm sorry, if you're going to speak and you will be offered an opportunity to speak, you need to speak into the mic. Because those that are listening online can't hear you.
So July and,
J-
sorry, my apologies. The owner will be coming up. They can answer those questions
Okay.
specifically, so I don't have those.
yeah, and my second part of my question was the one picture that we saw, what time of year was that? And was there sort of water depth information provided from May, which is typically the start of boating season, until the sort of September time period when the big lake drawdowns happen?
Yeah, and through you, Chair, those photos were submitted by the owner, so they could provide exactly when those
Okay.
photos were taken.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Ms. Markham? Hearing none, thank you. I don't see the owners listed, but I understand you wish to speak, so if you'd like to come forward.
Good afternoon, Planners Committee and community. Darren and I, my husband, looked for many years for a property to replace our current cottage, which is just around the corner from here. And when we found this 3-acre peninsula, we knew that the Quagama Lake permitted boathouses, where our current lake does not. So it was one of the big draws for us to be able to put a boathouse with a cottage and with a detached garage, knowing that what we were building was only going to cover a very small percentage of the land. And I think it's already been addressed by Melissa. We did speak immediately when we had possession of the house or the land. So we purchased it in April and it closed August 1st. The first week of August, we had a local boathouse contractor come out. We knew we were going to do exactly what we were on a maximum for width for deck. And then we mapped it out. I went out with a measuring tape, and we needed 36 feet of draft for a 19-foot, pardon? Sorry, 36 inches for a 19-foot boat for its draft. And I went out 100 feet and I was still in 30, I finally got to 36 feet, 36 inches. So we did not know when we purchased it, that if we were going to comply with putting a boathouse right on the land, that we would not be able to use the boathouse for boats. So the gentleman at the time suggested that we consider projecting it out. That's all we're doing. We're not changing where the location is. We're 500 feet from the EP zone of our land. We knew that. And so we're just trying to project it out. And the difference for anything would be, it'd be the exact same structure and dock if it was sitting on the land. We're just pushing it out so that we can use the water for boats. That's solely that reason. And then with regards to the structure of the garage, as Melissa noted, when you have the land as it is, your building envelope gets very, very small because you have to come in 100 feet this way, or we'll use meters, 30 meters this way, 30 meters this way, 30 meters this way. So that building envelope for the garage is quite small. And the only part in the minor variance for the garage is the carport has 2 posts that are going to be closer to than the 30 meters. The actual triple car garage sits well within the building envelope, but the carport for a higher structured boat has 2 posts that are sitting closer, And just contrary to some of the letters, there is a tree line between the water and where the garage will be. I just want to point that all out. The boathouse is actually, and I know it was mentioned by Melissa, is totally permissible by its size. We haven't asked for the boathouse to be larger or higher or anything. We've only asked that it be projected into the water more. And if you look at the map of our land, our point comes around like this, and the boathouse will be still not as far as where my land is. So no boat can come around that way and us be a hazard, because our land curves around, if you look at it. And there are stumps that are out there that anybody who's local would know about it. And in the Wolf Creek, there are boathouses already that do have bubblers. So, because somebody said something about a bubbler, but there are two. We are avid sledders. We come up that. We know that there's bubblers. We know as a sledder, you don't go near boathouses. And so we will have wherever it ends up being, and it will be projected out, we will have a bubbler system on our boathouse. Any questions?
Questions? Member Rogers.
I'm still on the garage. I'm trying to figure out, when I look at the drawings that were submitted with the application, it's talking about a 27.94 meter setback from one corner and a 23.55 setback on the other side. So both of those are, it's supposed to be 30, isn't it? Or is it? Maybe you can help.
Yeah. Yes, so the minimum setback for a garage is 30 meters, but in this case, because the shoreline is the front yard, it's the closest point is the only relief that's being requested.
Okay.
So that's the
The
20
23.55.
correct, yeah, the
okay.
closest one. Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions for the owner at this point in time?
My husband would like to speak too.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Nice to meet all of you. I would just make a comment about voting in May. You're obviously all local. Black Flies, you don't vote in May. It's just not going to happen. So I just want to talk about navigation. And if we were to look at the slide of my peninsula, where the boathouse is tucked into the corner, out in front of the peninsula are deadheads and markers. So there is no navigation. They're coming into my boathouse. They're going to cross my spit of land. So there is no navigation. There are no boats coming into my portion. It's been suggested that I've misled in some of my photos. There is a photo in the application submitted by Melissa that I did take. And I'm standing in the water with my boots, and I'm exactly 45 feet from the shoreline. So you can say it's misleading, but that's me. That's just, I'm standing there, I took the measurement. To answer your question on the survey, the water levels are marked by the engineer surveyor, and it was taken in July and in November. So if you want to follow up on that, I think that was a question one of you ladies had.
But just on that, the picture that we saw, when was that?
October.
That was October.
The one of the boots?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And just speaking to the garage, so when you're trying to get relief, you're obviously using the roof line. But when you are actually underneath the roof, there's one concrete post in the relief area that we're seeking. And on the other side, it's a concrete post, but that's all gravel. It's not a concrete base underneath there. If you look at the plans, they're actually carports. If that makes sense. I think does anybody have any questions for me?
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we have, are there other members who are in the audience who wish to speak to the application? If so, I have listed here, Peter Evans and Alexandra Lappin.
I think those are all the ones that are online, so
Okay,
I would suggest we start with the ones in the room first, and then we'll move to Zoom, just for order.
So you mentioned my name on here. No, but
I'll volunteer if that's acceptable to you.
sure. Come forward, state your name.
Thanks. My name is Amber Stewart, and I'm a lawyer who's been hired by some of the residents on the lake.
If you'd like to sit down and speak into the
will.
microphone.
Yes, I will. I just thought I'd offer, I submitted a letter, but it came yesterday. I have copies of it if that would be helpful for anybody to look at. I don't know if you've received it or not.
It was circulated to the
Okay, so
committee.
you've got it. Okay, great. All right, thank you. So I'm sure that you'll hear from a number of residents. And I hope my job here is to summarize the issues that have been raised of concern. But I expect that many of them will be able to speak in much more detail to these matters because they're obviously the people who live here and own cottages and are much more familiar with the circumstances. So let me start off by saying, and I did put it in the first page of the letter, we are in support of a deferral today. We believe that there is not sufficient information for this committee to conclude that the 4 tests under the Planning Act have been met, that more study and more information is required. If a deferral is not granted by the committee today, our respectful submission is that the application should be refused based on the information that has been provided and based on what we don't know. The second thing I'll say is that it's really unfortunate that the owners didn't approach their neighbors to consult with them about this application beforehand. The first time that this group of people got notice of this was late last week when they received the committee's notice in the mail. So obviously we haven't had a chance or an opportunity to talk to the neighbors and to talk to Ms. Markham to see if there is a solution that can be reached, but we are willing to work with them to find a solution if this is something that they're prepared to do after the hearing today, assuming it is deferred. So clearly the boathouse is the primary issue of concern, although I don't want to understate that the garage is also of concern, but I'll speak to the boathouse first. And I can see that you're already aware that the most problematic issue concerning the boathouse is the extent to which it projects into the lake. We've heard from Ms. Markham and you know, with respect, she has done a planning report as a professional land use planner, but she doesn't have the information. The information that she's relying upon for the high water mark is apparently based in part, at least, on photos that have been taken by her client, who is not an expert. And she's also acknowledged that she's not an ecologist. So as you are probably much more familiar than me, there is a drawdown every year in September. The water levels in the lake drop by at least about 8.8 meters. That's almost 3 feet. So that is a significant drawdown. You can see, and some of the visuals that you've already seen, they've helpfully printed onto foam core. So you might see these show up again, but I'm just going to hold this one up now. This is the photo that was submitted in the application showing the shoreline. And this is a photo that I'm glad to hear the owner acknowledge was taken in October, because that's when we thought it was taken based on how things look. This is a photo that's taken in September, and this is a photo that is taken in late May. And it's very clear from comparing these 3 photos that the water extends all the way to the vegetation that is adjacent to this shoreline. So there's quite a significant difference if the high water mark were measured at the time where the water levels are typical, not at the time where the water levels are at their lowest. And just as a note, the zoning bylaw does define high water mark as the normal, ordinary, or regulated high water mark of any body of water as indicated by the character of the vegetation or soil. So in our submission, it's not appropriate to take that high water mark when the water levels are at their lowest. And of course, this goes to what is the owner's justification for needing to project the boathouse out so far, which is need. And they say that they need this extensive projection in order to be able to accommodate a boat in the boathouse. You are going to hear from a number of people who live right next door, where their water is deeper in front of their own cottages, that with a much lesser projection, with something that complies with the zoning bylaw, or perhaps a minor increase over the zoning bylaw permissions, they are able to accommodate a boat at their docks or in a boathouse for the vast majority of the boating season, right up until mid to late September. So in our submission, it's not, it just simply hasn't been established that this extent of projection is needed in order to accommodate a boat in a boathouse. I will comment a little bit on the planning impacts of it, but I just want to say, like, one comment that Ms. Markham made in her presentation is with respect to trying to compare the projection proposed for a boathouse to the projection that is permitted for a dock. She said that a dock is allowed to go 15 meters, and so projecting a boathouse is only an extra 4.74 meters or 13 feet beyond that. Well, I think that's really reflecting a misunderstanding of the intent of the two different provisions in the zoning bylaw. This is a lake that is defined by character, by vegetation, by naturalized shorelines, by minimizing the extent of development, and the official plan speaks specifically to protecting views both from adjacent neighbors and from the water as well. What we see when we're looking out on our properties and what we see when we're looking out from the lake towards the shore. And so there's a good reason that the zoning bylaw regulates on this lake specifically, the extent of projection that is permitted for a dock, which is permitted to project much further out. It's double the projection that's permitted because it's just a dock. It doesn't have any visual impact versus the projection of a boathouse. And regardless, even if we're looking at the dock projection, which is already generous compared to the projection permitted for a boathouse, this is already proposing to exceed that dock projection by almost 5 meters. So in our respectful submission, it's not an appropriate comparison, and there's a reason for that standard. I did want to point out the photo, and I'm sure you'll hear about this as well. There's two that I want to show you, and this is from the adjacent neighbor right to the south, who is standing right in. I love this picture. He looks happy. It's May, and he's waving. But you can see that he's standing in front of his dock, which he measured as 45 feet from the shore, and the water level in May is almost up to his waist, and he looks like a tall guy to me. And then he moved out 45 feet in front of the applicant's shoreline, and you can see that the water levels are sufficiently deep already in May to be able to accommodate a boathouse there. So, and I know you're well familiar with the lake graphs and the fact that it is absolutely typical for the water to be much higher throughout the summer season. Okay, so in terms of the planning impacts of the boathouse, and I think respectfully, this is something that the planner has largely disregarded. She's made a statement in her report and to you today that there is no planning impact arising from the projection of the boathouse. There absolutely is a planning impact. As I said, the very helpful rendering that shows the current view of the neighbor to the south, looking not standing on their dock, but on the shore as well, where their dock attaches to the shore, looking out over lake, and how that view will be obstructed with a large boathouse. Acknowledge it's compliant in terms of size, but a large boathouse that projects more than 2 times out into the lake as what it's permitted to do now. And this is only one perspective. It's not representing perspective of others down the lake, and it's not representing the perspective of people who live across from the lake. So we do believe that there is a significant impact in terms of compatibility, character, privacy, overlook, and massing and visual impact as well, both for the people who live in the area and for the people who use the lake. All right, the next thing that I would like to discuss, and I think I'll go to the garage and then I'll talk about the environmental impacts. And again, this is something that I've read in Ms. Markham's report. I've heard her mention it today, that there is simply not enough buildable area once one applies the setback constraints to construct a cottage and a garage that is compliant with the zoning bylaw. I mean, I cannot fathom how this is an accurate statement. The plans that we've seen do not have dimensions on the garage. There's no floor plans. I haven't seen anything that shows actually how big each structure is, and that's not what I'm used to looking at least in terms of plans submitted with an application. But by comparing the stats, the cottage itself is 243.4 square meters in footprint, not including the sunroom. So that's just the footprint of the main cottage. The garage is 233.4 square meters. Like, that is a 2,500 foot garage. When I used just a very crude measurement tool to base it on other dimensions on the plan, it appears to me that that garage is 25.5 meters wide. A typical parking space width is 2.6 meters. So that means that the interior area of that garage could fit 7 or more cars side by side. 7 or more cars. And then on top of that, there's a big carport that is attached to it that is a covered area. These all project into the area that is currently covered in trees and vegetation. So I say this to say, I understand it complies with the coverage restrictions in the bylaw. It does not comply with the setback restrictions in the bylaw. I cannot fathom how it is not possible to build a garage within the footprint that is available. I would just suggest it can't be a 7-car garage. It would have to be a 2 or 3-car garage, but it could fit. So that leads to the heading of environmental and safety impacts, which I've set out in my letter. Again, I think it is a wholly insufficient response to suggest that just because this proposed dock will not project into the EP zoned portion of the property, there are no environmental impacts that could possibly arise and that need to be considered. Ms. Markham herself has acknowledged that she's not an ecologist. So I don't think she's qualified to say that a dock projecting further is an improvement. I just don't think she's qualified to say that. And secondly, she has mentioned in her report, but also not spent too much time discussing the fact that a portion of the shoreline frontage is designated in the county's official plan as an unevaluated wetland. And we heard comments earlier about the importance of surface water bodies within the township and their ecological importance. There are numerous policies, a number of which I've cited. I'm not going to go through them in detail now, but there are numerous policies in the county and the township's official plan that speak to the absolute critical nature of protecting natural heritage features and particularly wetlands. So because this is shown as an unevaluated wetland, the township's official plan says that it is mandatory in a development application for at least a scoped EIS to be prepared when there is development proposed adjacent to an unevaluated wetland. Now, I presume the only reason that this wasn't requested is because the township's official plan does not, it looks like it hasn't been updated to reflect that mapping in the county's official plan. But the official plan also says that if there is a conflict between the township and the county official plan prevails. So we have an unevaluated wetland that is shown on the site. It is mandatory that an EIS be completed. And that garage footprint, which is very large, sits in an area that is adjacent to that, to the natural features on the site, as well as the dock and the boathouse as well. So in my respectful submission, it's something that should be done in order to be able to say conclusively that there are no environmental impacts that would justify turning this application down. How can we know this if this work hasn't been done? Other residents have raised a number of safety concerns. We did just hear that there is a bubbler that is proposed to be used. The bubbler can cause safety issues, and the fact of the boathouse and dock projecting more than double what it is permitted to do into the lake extends the area of de-icing of that bubbler that much further into the lake. So in my respectful submission, that's something that also would need to be looked at in more detail. I think that covers the concerns that I've raised. Again, I'll just conclude by saying that we think a deferral is absolutely the only appropriate solution here, except for a refusal, but we understand that something is going to be built and we want to work with these owners to be able to come up with something that addresses both the planning impacts and the environmental impacts that could potentially arise. And then the last final comment I'll make, with respect to the survey, I haven't seen it. I don't know, the survey that's been mentioned, I did call Mr. O'Callaghan to ask about the survey, and he at the time, I don't know if that changes, perhaps he could answer that, but he at the time had not seen a copy of the survey submitted with the application. So I did do some digging online, and the only thing that I can find, there is a survey referenced on the site plan, and it's now I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it was Van Markel. But in any event, there was a topographical survey completed by a surveying firm. I was able to find a reference to that survey online and an image of it. So it's definitely the survey that applies to this property. And I see you might have it. But in any event, it was done in 2010. That's my point. So I think that would even be beneficial for everyone to see. Well,
I'm sorry, I'm sorry,
and
that is inappropriate.
and I can appreciate it might have been updated, but we don't have that information. So I don't think the township has it either. So all of this information is critical to be able to properly assess this application and confirm that it does in fact meet the 4 tests. And hopefully the owners will be willing to work with this group of residents to address their concerns. So thank you for all the time you've afforded me. I appreciate it, and it made the drive up here worth it. So thanks.
Which is why I wanted to give everyone an
I
opportunity to
appreciate
speak.
it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Mr. O'Callaghan, I
yeah.
sense you have a comment.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, just to comment on the topographic survey that shows the water depths. I am in receipt of that and I apologize to the applicant and to the committee and the members of the public. I did not circulate that plan. That was not included on the agenda, so my apologies for that. We do have that information though. So I will provide that to the committee and members afterwards.
Thank you. That would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Any questions from the committee to this presenter? Mr. Rogers.
Thank you for your presentation, but this is a bit of a difficult question, but would your clients be prepared to do a scope DIS if necessary?
I mean, I don't have an answer to that. Like, I think that's more appropriately determined by.
That would be our
township.
decision.
Yeah, I think it'd be appropriately determined by township staff, but I think it's important that at least the environmental impacts are considered. I mean,
Yeah.
I can read the official plan. I see that it says for development adjacent to an unevaluated wetland, a scope DIS must be
Yeah.
done.
Okay, thank you.
John.
And just to comment on that, so the township would not require an EIS in this situation, and the county did provide comments on the application, and we're not requesting that information. But that is, if committee wishes, that is something that could be added. So just that, wanted to clarify that.
Other questions from committee members? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Other members in the audience who wish to present?
Hi.
Come forward, state your name, please.
So my name is Carrie Schramm, and I am one of the neighbors directly adjacent to the property in question. So thank you for taking the time to hear all of us today. We've all taken time from work and everything else to be here, so thank you. I appreciate that. So in reviewing this application, my husband and I did have several concerns. And most importantly for us really is the experience that we're having on the lake. We respect that our neighbors have purchased this property with their own dreams about building and construction. And in buying our property, we've been renting on the lake for a few years. We have a couple small kids and a dog, and we put a lot of time into choosing a property and doing our research to really make sure that it would meet the needs of our family. We paid a premium to have a west-facing unobstructed view, as that was something that was actually really important to us. The neighboring property, we knew at some point would be sold and redeveloped, and we actually welcome that. At one point, it seemed to be a duck habitat. We're happy that that is no longer the case, and that there is some redevelopment going on, as it is needed work. Our concern really is the size and scope of the development being proposed. And as Amber highlighted, not just the size of the boathouse, it's the location of the boathouse. And I really do want to detach the two. I think the neighbors in their application have really combined the dock and the boathouse together as one piece. Functionally, yes, it is. But in practicality for us, it very much feels like two separate structures with two separate impacts. In terms of the dock itself, the dock is, I'm a physician, so I did the math, but it's not the best. I usually have other people help me with that stuff. They're called pharmacists. The dock itself is 31% bigger than the current recommendation. The way it stands now, you saw the nice pretty peninsula. It goes around into a bay called Stumpy Bay. And what our kids do is they get on paddle boards, kayaks, canoes, stay tucked in close enough to the shore that they're not blasted by boats and everything else. And they go along that shore into Stumpy Bay where it's sheltered and there's loons and wildlife. There's a big dock sticking out. My kids have to go around that. And they're going out into where there's much more boat traffic and motorcraft. So that's a concern for me. The boathouse being where it is, the current regulations state that a boathouse can be 8 meters, has to be affixed to the shore and can extend 8 meters into the water. That's the current regulations. What they're proposing is, the size of the boathouse, but it's actually 138% greater out in the water than currently is allowed. That's a huge difference. A boathouse extending 8 meters into the water, sure, I'd sit on my dock, it'd be here, but it wouldn't be obstructing, 20+% of my view. We did do some mock-ups. You guys got all the pictures. The printing is remarkable here. Peter had the time to do some printing. It really is, like we have this nice little dock.
If you could hold it up so that everybody.
Sticking out. Yeah, her cameras. We have this nice dock with this beautiful view. We recognize that some of it's going to be blocked by a boathouse here, but sticking a boathouse out here, the way the land shifts, this goes from being something that's tucked beside me to something that's really out beside me in front of us.
I wonder if you would mind maybe passing
Yeah.
that around.
And you can see similarly with this one too, you guys can kind of see here with the mock-up, a boathouse tucked on the shore here, we do have lots of natural vegetation. We take good care of our vegetation, but a boathouse tucked here, it's barely gonna be noticeable. Out here, it's right there. The way the land is situated, this also really reduces our privacy, right? This boathouse has a view straight back onto our dock here where, you know, my preteen daughter and her friends hang out in bathing suits. It just feels kind of, it does though, it feels totally uncomfortable to have her and her friends hanging out here with this dock
I'm
of
sorry,
people looking.
that
down.
is not allowed. I would ask that you refrain from doing that. This is her opportunity to speak.
We're new neighbors, we don't know each other well, and I do have young girls hanging out there in bathing suits with a dock of people I don't know, looking directly back at them. For something that's a variance, right? It's not something that's part of the lake, it's not something that's part of where I bought on purpose. In my view, these changes aren't minor. Taking a dock that would extend, taking a boathouse that would be attached to land and going 8 meters out and putting it 19 meters out isn't a minor change. This is a very significant change. Yes, we teach our kids, don't go near boathouses in winter, don't go near bubblers, you know, stay and give your space. If a bubbler's out that far, I don't know how that ice is going to be impacted in front of our cottage. We snowshoe, we snowmobile, we hike, we skate on the lake. I've seen kids who've fallen through ice. It's a huge fear to have kids out on the ice where it may be impacted. The garage concerns, you know, it's a giant garage. Yes, there's a lot of vegetation. A lot of the vegetation on that property has already been altered in the past 6+ months. Whether it's there or not, I just don't think it needs to be quite that large, extending quite that far to the shore. I don't know what purpose the garage is going to serve. You know, something of that size, could there be oil spills? Could there be other chemicals or other materials that close to the water that could spill and leak into the water? I'm not environmentalist, I don't know, but I have concerns of something of that size, what it's actually going to be used for and how it's going to be used and what potential risks that could have for the soil and then the water that's nearby. I don't know if I've missed anything. I'll leave it to my husband.
Questions for the presenter? Hearing Mr. Rogers?
I know in your letter you said you had a graphic designer do this work. Is this the kind of graphic work they do? I'm just trying to make sure that that
Yeah, so
perspective is a good
It's my
perspective.
husband's graphic designer. He can speak to it better, but the designer normally works with doing designs for his products, which are like precast concrete. So it is, I think, sort of similar. It's it's involved with like precast concrete and construction, so it's similar in that realm. I don't think he's normally putting it on water because concrete sinks, but yeah.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other members of the public present who wish to speak to the committee? Come forward and state your name, please.
Hello, I'm Jason Brown. I'm Carrie's husband. Thank you for taking the time to hear us committee. I think Carrie covered most of it. There were a couple of questions. The graphic designer was through my work. I do a lot of technical work with lifting concrete products, product design, that sort of thing. So he does a lot of work with that. He used the scale for from the submittal to make his placements and calculations. And obviously it's not going to be perfect, but he did make his best effort. On one of our included photos, it was a site drawing provided from the plan, overlaid on top of an aerial photo or satellite photo of the peninsula, which gave us our reference points for that. Even the measuring we did, trying to estimate 45 feet from shore, where the depth is, we used the measurements from the submittal, took a length of rope, the length from our property line to try and get it as close as possible. It's a fairly big target where the dock is being proposed. And I'm confident that we were within that target. Beyond what Carrie said, so these photos we submitted of me and my waiters, they just noted that it's May 18th. Since then, the lake's come up about a foot with all the rain. So it's not a particularly high water time when these were taken. It was just starting to get into our normal kind of seasonal levels, and these things obviously vary. Just the comment on a 19-foot boat. We happen to have a 19-foot boat. It's at our dock. Our dock's 45 feet from the high water mark. We've got a 90 horsepower outboard that's down when this photo was taken at the end of last August. So we're able to use our property. We're able to use our dock much closer to shore. The depths are very similar. If anything, the neighboring property seems to be deeper. I commonly swim from our dock to the stumps on that point and back to try and keep in shape. So I feel like a fairly decent sense of the depth. It's not, if it was really as represented in that boots photo, I wouldn't be able to swim through that path. There was a note about the stumps being marked. They're not marked by the cottage association on the lake. Someone puts probably just, with concern for safety of neighbors, like a boat bumper on one of them. It's not something that's properly maintained. There's lots of users on the lake that are new to the lake, like ourselves, we're relatively new, that wouldn't necessarily be aware of those hazards, let alone coming around the corner and a boathouse and a very long dock being projected. One of the issues I had from the submittal is when you read through it, both the boathouse projection and the dock projection are both handled as if they were the same thing. They're very different with very different impacts on neighbors. And so I don't completely understand why, especially when we saw even from the previous application, the boathouse in that situation was completely on land. Like they're very different. Like I'm a little bit puzzled why they're being treated exactly the same, like relief for the boathouse. Like I get relief for the dock, you need to boat, but I don't see how they're the same. So anyway, I was a bit puzzled by how those are being presented. Otherwise, I think everything was fairly, Carrie covered pretty much everything. One of the notes with the bubblers and the readings I've done a lot more reading on things like bubblers and steel docks and things like that than I would have expected. But supposedly bubblers have a particular impact in shallow water. Now the boathouses down the inlet are in significantly deeper water. You can dive off those docks. They're deep. So the potential for the thin ice or open water to extend out to, I included in our letter a report from the Ontario Cottage Association, where it can extend out hundreds of feet from shore, the thin ice, the weak ice. And that's a particular problem when it's unattended. You have to tune them. If it's really cold, you have to turn it up. If it's warm, you have to turn your bubbler down. And in a property, which I assume will be unattended for long periods of time, having that risk sitting right next to us and it may not affect our access, but if we're uncertain about our kids being able to play on the ice safely, I know people say no ice is safe ice, but if you have 3 feet of ice in front of our place, we normally assume that's pretty safe. That fear will impact on our usage, right? That uncertainty. But anyway, those are our concerns. I appreciate you taking our time to hear them.
Any questions from members of the committee? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak to the application? Come forward, state your name.
Hi, my name is Peter Evans, and I am a neighbor. I'm Jason's neighbor, so I'm 2 doors down from the applicant. I wanted to thank everybody for considering listening to everybody here and all the cottagers, because this is a really important issue to all of us. I've got some really serious concerns. I've been on the lake at that property since 2003, and I'm also a boater. So I've been there for over 22 years, and I'm intimately familiar with the water depth situation there and share some frustrations about the fact that the waters fluctuate quite a bit. So I really understand what the lake looks like in May and what the lake looks like in Thanksgiving, and I've had 22 years to see that. My family's also been on the lake since 1950, so I'm pretty familiar with Quagama and the overarching theme that we have on the lake of making sure that we preserve the beauty and the natural shoreline and the way that the lake looks. I've got some real serious questions with respect to the credibility of the information in this application, because again, I know when I'm 2 doors down. The photos taken by the applicant on the lake depth are certainly well into the fall. The applicant talks about October. I would suggest that's late October, when the lake is absolutely at its lowest. When most floating docks are sitting on sand. The lake retracts so much and it's far past boating season. What he's taken a look at and the pictures he's taken. Do we have that shot here? With the boots. Sorry, in the application with the applicant and his hip waders is way past boating season. I have a boat that's 21 feet and it requires 18 inches of draft. The applicant talks about his 19-foot boat requiring 36. If you do a quick Google search on a 19-foot boat, you'll get Siri or AI will tell you it's anywhere between 12 and 24 inches, not 36 inches. The applicant's requirement for depth is not nearly 62.5 feet out in the lake during normal boating season. I suspect it's probably half of that. So I don't know why, and perhaps he's been misinformed or he's taken measurements or he's not familiar. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt of the massive fluctuations, but this gentleman's going to be able to have his boat in the lake up until the end of boating season, certainly till the middle of September when they pull the plug in the lake, with a projection of likely half of what he's asking for. And as you can see in these pictures that Jason has illustrated, the look of a boathouse and the difference between a dock and a boathouse is massive, right? A dock, I don't know of any docks on Quagama Lake since I've been on the lake for 51 years that project out 62.5 inches, much less a boathouse at the end of that. And to look at something like that, a box in the middle of the lake, is severe. It's really severe. It's not in the way that we have developed the land and the way this township has protected the look of the shoreline and has made sure Quagama stays pristine. This is not Lake Rosso. This is not Lake Muskoka. This is not those lakes with cottages above boathouses and all of that. This is a lake that is all about preserving the heritage. And this township has been very mindful of that fact, and I applaud you for doing that and making sure this stays pristine. What this proposal looks like is again a box right in the middle of the lake. So I've got concerns about how much water he thinks he needs. I think that's grossly inaccurate and needs to be looked at, hence the deferral. I've got real concerns about what he thinks he needs for water for his boat, because I have a boat that's larger than his that requires 18 inches, not 36, that's half. So I think that's wrong. I understand these folks are real estate agents. They met with the listing agents. Her name is Ellen Wiley. I've known her all my life. She was intimately friends. I don't know about intimate, sorry. She was good friends with Don Clayton, who owned the property prior. She was over there all the time. She was very familiar. The listing agent was very familiar with the water depth issues. So when they speak about not knowing and buying the property and then finding out that it's low water depth, I don't believe that. I believe they would have been disclosed that. I'm sure they're astute enough to ask those questions, being real estate agents themselves. I think they knew what they were getting themselves into with this property and this low water depth. Okay, again, I mentioned the dock is much different than a boathouse. The picture they're showing is mid to October at the earliest, perhaps even later. They talk about boathouses in Wolf Circle. All of those boathouses are conforming. They're all conforming boathouses that are all right up against the shore, which is what this township allows. So comparing what they want to what's already there is complete apples and oranges. It's nowhere near. One's a box in the middle of the lake. The other one is a boathouse on the shore. And the last thing I wanted to mention is I did speak with the M&R this week. I spoke to a gentleman by the name of Jeremiah Young, and I don't know if that's been in Amber's report, but this projection, 62.5 feet in the middle of the lake, is going to require significant structural work, and it encroaches on what they call crown lake bed. And if you're in crown lake bed area and you're touching crown lake bed, you have a requirement of 15 square meters max to touch crown lake bed, after which you need some kind of a variance or some kind of outside of normal building operations with M&R. So, you know, as Amber mentioned, a deferral, I think we need to verify these facts. I think they're incorrect, a lot of them. And I think there's more work to be done on the environmental impact and the look and feel of what this is going to do to the lake as it relates to what the township and this lake is all about. Thanks very much. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak? State your name, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Claude Norfolk. I've been on Coagama Lake for 25 years, and I'm appearing today as Vice President of the Coagama Lake Cottagers Association. Now, we did submit a brief, and what I thought might be helpful if I just quickly summarized the association's position. So our concerns concern mostly the boathouse, and they pertain to the excessive projection beyond the bylaw standard, the visual impact from the navigable waterway, and the precedent this form of development may set for future shoreline development on Coagama Lake. The proposed structure extending 19.04 meters into the lake exceeds the standard by more than double. We question the validity of the applicant's claim that adequate water depth cannot be achieved based on photographs that look like they were taken in the fall. Additionally, the rationale for the proposed location of the boathouse, rather than exploring alternatives along the other portion of the property, remains unclear to us. We also believe the new development should support and maintain the character of its surrounding environment. Along the stretch of shoreline, few boathouses exist, and the area is defined by its extensive natural vegetation and dwellings. The proposed boathouse, alongside the minimally obscured dwelling, means this proposal does not align with the established character of the area. Lastly, approving this variance could inadvertently open the door for the justification of structures with similar projections or visual appearance in other parts of the lake. And those are my comments, Chair.
I have been assured by our planner many times that there's no such thing as a precedent in planning.
Yeah.
Are there any questions from the committee members? The presenter. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else present in the audience who wishes to speak to the application? Just state your name, please, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom Mulhall. I'm here representing myself and my in-laws. We own the point straight across from the applicant. Let's see it here. Yeah, it's kind of horseshoe shape. We've been on the lake 55 years. I was a member of the Coagama Lake Cottagers Association as a navigation director for 2016-17. Both myself and my predecessor, we had very large part of the community that put in to make this area no wake zone. We did talk with the ministry, and unfortunately, it was 10 feet wider than what we allow. What is happening is once we put projections of boathouses farther out, it's bringing the boats closer together. The boats have, from back in the day when we all had smaller boats, the boats are getting larger in nature. We've had very close calls, and this is at the exit of the inlet. So as I'm sure most of us are boaters, we try to keep our distance from anything that we are driving by. So as we bring boathouses out, we are pushing the boats farther into the inlet. Within our inlet, I believe there is 13 full-time residences, both on Wolf Circle and on Coagama Lake Road. The minute the ice is gone, their boats are in the water. 3 of them are contractors. So that inlet is being used from the minute the ice is out until well almost into when it's snowing. We are getting navigation up and down through there. We have a lot of small children using it, like Carrie mentioned, paddle boards, canoes, etc. And it seems to be a place where they all collaborate and use the facility. I do fear this is creating a bit of a blind corner. When you come down Wolf Inlet, you can see to the east if any boat is approaching. Now this could cause an issue with that visibility where you're gonna have to take a much sharper corner and not seeing what's coming at you. So I please just ask the council to consider that. There are other variations. Within Wolf Inlet, we only have one enclosed boathouse. And that is not within a site. A point comes out beside it and they are not encroaching on a site from their neighbor. All other boathouses are the carport style with a small area close to the shore. Most of them have a deck on top where they're dry land. So this will be the first which is encroaching on somebody's view. So I ask the council to please consider this. We do see lake levels rise and fall. Again, both myself and or the gentleman's name was Adrian McKinnery, who was my predecessor, we could not make it a no wake zone. So the farther we put boathouses out, those larger boats going back and forth is creating a danger. So please consider that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Just hang on in case there's any questions. Are you any questions for the presenter? Okay, sorry.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak to the application? If not, we'll go to those who are online.
Hi there, it's my name's Craig Richardson. I don't know if you see my hand up.
Okay, could you maybe turn up your volume just a tiny bit?
Sure, I'll get a little bit closer to the mic. Can you hear me now?
Thank you.
Excellent. I'll just introduce myself to the council. My name's Craig Richardson. I've had the privilege of being on Quagma Lake now for 10 years, and I live 5 doors down from the subject property. And again, just a big thanks to all of you at the committee to letting me say a few words today. And I really do appreciate your time. I just want to say that I agree with all the points that my neighbors and friends have just made. In particular, I do believe that the applicants as realtors are sophisticated buyers, and they either knew or ought to have known about the water levels. The photos regarding the water depths, in my opinion, are misleading at best. Like Peter, I have a 20-foot boat, so sort of almost in between the two boats in question. And my boat drafts 18 inches, much like Peter. And I can tell the committee over the last 10 years, I've been able to completely enjoy the full boating season from May to Thanksgiving. Albeit once Thanksgiving hits, I do have to get my boat out of the water, otherwise it'll get beached as well. And I actually do like boating in May because there's no black flies in the middle of the lake. So it's actually a good place to hide and still enjoy the beauty of nature. That said, there was a lot of discussion just around the issue of safe navigation. And, I heard the applicants and their experts say that there are no safety issues here. And, I honestly do believe that this boathouse does pose an increased risk to safety navigation. And just for context to the committee, I have 30 years experience in the insurance industry, most of that being in claims, and I currently hold the role of Senior Vice President and Chief Claims Officer of a top 5 insurance company here in Canada. So I would humbly hold myself as an expert or consider myself an expert in this area of safe navigation, and whether that's on water or on land. I have experience handling marine claims as well as residential, commercial, and automobile claims, including injury claims as well. So we actually have had almost a near miss where a boat did hit a swimmer in the mouth of Wolf Inlet years back, and it was quite close. And I can tell you from my expert opinion that a boathouse of this size extending that far in the navigating channel which will compress the area of which swimmers, canoers, paddle boaters, and boaters where they have to coexist will materially increase the risk of an accident happening. And I've seen sadly on multiple occasions where a boater strikes a swimmer and the results are tragic. Irreversibly scarring families. And I do not think that anyone, on this committee, on this lake, actually wants to see that happen. And the fact that we came close before, I think this really increases that risk. And so I just wanted to underscore that piece to the committee for consideration as well. I won't repeat the other items because I think they're very accurately covered, and I'll stop there and pause and pass it back to the committee for any questions that you may have of me.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Richardson? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else online who wishes to speak?
Here I am. Hello,
If you could state your name, please.
my name is Sarah Nixon, and my husband is Charles Phillips, who I think may also be on the call. I just want to reconfirm the statement that Craig, I'm 4 down. So our cottage is 4 down from the applicants. And I think just in terms of context to understand, these are very narrow lots. So that's why you're hearing from many of us. And it is quite a populated area. And I just want to underscore the comments that Craig made. Thank you, Craig. That near miss was our family. And we're very well aware of it. So just reinforcing the safety concerns at the mouth of the inlet with the number of small children who are swimming and enjoying that property. We've been on the lake since 1995. We've raised our 4 children and now our grandchildren there. So ask just for special consideration of the navigational issues that this might represent for us in an area that is already quite busy. Thank you very much.
Any questions? Thank you for your comments. Good afternoon. Can you hear us?
Hello, yes, I can.
If you could state your name for us, please.
My name is Paul Ritchie. Myself and my wife Gail, we purchased our property about 8 years ago. We're about 6 or 7 cottages down from the applicant. And I don't have a lot of new to say, just repeating what I think is really, really important. We actually moved from Lake Russell to Quagama. And one of the major reasons was the beauty of this lake, the natural shoreline, the trees, the lack of large structures dotting the shoreline. And it would be a shame, yes, to allow something to project into the lake of that size, just defeating what we feel is a huge, huge benefit of this lake. So, we think the sightline would be affected greatly by this proposal. Another item we think is really important is the word minor, minor variance. And I know this has been noted, but 138% increase. I'm just trying to fathom how that could be considered even close to being a minor variance. And that's the boathouse. The garage is 30-odd%, which is still on the extreme high end of minor. Another one is the size of the garage, and in terms of being able to conform with the bylaws. 2,500 square foot garage is bigger than certainly most cottages and even most houses in the area. So that's another concern and issue. So anyways, I would just wanted to reiterate and explain my stance on those items, which I think are really, really important. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? You're doing a good job of navigating technology. Good afternoon, sir. You'd state your name?
Good afternoon, Council. Will Boak, representing myself and my wife Christine. We've been lucky enough to be on the lake in the area for the past 10 or 11 years, since 2015. We have not had the opportunity to meet our new neighbors, but look forward to in the near future. With regards to this application for variance, I believe that you've heard from the community fairly soundly and fairly cohesively. Wanted to add 2 points. For those of you on the council that have not been to Coagama, Coagama is a bit of a gem. It has 109 kilometers of shoreline, of which 60% is Crown land. It is a true gem in Northern Ontario. That's the reason why a number of us have located to that particular lake, is the view. The view of absolutely protected, uninhabited shoreline, of which is my view across from where my dock is and a lot of my neighbors as well. So the first concern is that may be spoiled by this variance application in terms of the length of the dock and certainly with the location of the boathouse. Yes, being, let's call it an eyesore in the distance. The second is obviously safety. All of us that you've heard from today have kids, some older, some very young, but they all use the common space out in front of our cottage. The inlet is busy enough as it is. By extending a dock and boathouse into the inlet and narrowing that particular passageway just increases the danger. You've heard from Tom and others about this. So with that said, I believe that there's lots of room for us to negotiate something that would work for the community with the applicant. And so I recommend that the committee recommend a deferral in this matter. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, sir. Do you have one more, I think? That's it? Okay, we will provide the applicants an opportunity to respond to the comments that they've heard, if you'd like to come forward. I understand that this is a challenging position that you found yourself in.
It's emotional. It's cottage country.
It is.
I'm well versed on it.
Are we all emotional?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So I just to clarify a few things. So, in the inlet, there are covered boat ports, that project out into the land. There's slides that project out into the water. Our neighbors, I think that's to the north, they don't object. They know exactly what we're doing. The garage size, I'm building it because I can. I got all the toys. I want to put my toys in there. I don't want them sitting around the outside of the building. I've got a 2,500 square foot garage now. It's full. So I don't know why people are judging that. As far as Eileen Wiley, she's not the realtor.
If we keep your comments restricted to the application as opposed to
Okay, fair enough.
individuals.
I have a question. The application is for both the garage and the boathouse. Doesn't seem to be any opposition to my garage. If we were to agree to a postponement, could we separate the two buildings and have a conversation about the garage? And then we can talk about the boathouse after the fact?
There has been some opposition voiced about the garage.
But if they're, okay, sorry, I'm interrupting.
I guess I would ask our planner what his thoughts are with respect to that.
I don't believe we could just approve one variance and then revisit the other ones at a separate time because it is just one application. So that'd be my recommendation that we deal with it in its entirety.
And Sean, is that in stone or is that an opinion?
What you've just heard from our planner is your response.
No, I'm saying is that's his position. Is that a mandatory position? Being the fact that they're two on the same application?
It's not possible to separate them.
Okay, okay, I take that. So so our neighbors to the north, they know exactly what we're doing. They're not here. We did speak to Carrie in the front yard, showed her where the cottage and things were gonna go last year. So it's not exactly that we didn't share that with them. The navigation, I mean, we're 174 meters across from our point to the point across the land. Again, that we're tucked in. The boats are not coming into my corner of the peninsula. The boats are further out. There are deadheads. There are markers. They're not coming in. I mean, and that's just the sketch there of Carrie's view. It's distorted. We're not in that. We're tucked in further. So I just want to clarify that. So that's all I have to say. Carrie, do you have anything? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I did take the opportunity to speak to both my neighbors, north and south. Carrie and I stood in front of the current cottage and I showed her the stake in which my current new build would be going to. And I did discuss the fact that I was trying to salvage a big, huge tree if I could. We did have to remove some other vegetation because they were actually destroyed in the July storm last year. So everybody saw those trees down. Now, I stood on the deck of the person north of me and said to them, the boathouse would be around the corner because there was discussion about wondering whether or not they would be blocked or at view. My question is to the committee that what we have drawn as a boathouse and what we've put into place as a dock is completely compliable if it's on the land. Is that correct?
So the projection of the boathouse, so the overall length of the boathouse would have
The
to
whole
be
boathouse
reduced.
structure that we.
Just let him respond to
Oh,
your
sorry.
question.
So I want to make sure he understands my question.
Yeah, so if this structure was located on shore, the length of the boathouse itself exceeds what's permitted, the 8-meter max. But other than that, the width that complies, the dock length would comply.
Okay. And my second question is that other than the two posts and on the garage, the roof line is what's going over the predominantly and the posts. So if they were moved, this is just a question, that there was nobody who could tell us we couldn't build that if it was moved within the envelope.
And I would need to see more detailed drawings of the garage to know exactly what it is that's encroaching on the setback, because the setback's taken to the exterior wall, not to the overhang. You are permitted a certain amount of overhang to a structure, so.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I don't have those details in front of me, but I would have to take a look at that further.
So I believe that in the drawings, the north end of the garage, which is a post, if you want to call it, holding up the roof line. No, okay. Oh, that is foundation, okay. I'm trying in my head to figure out how we can get drawings done that are sent to Sean during a condition period last year that were site approved for. And then we were told that, you know, there would be no problem with it at all. You supported it all along. And I would say that the projection out is something as a result of shallow water. I didn't make it up. I'd never been to that corner of Quagga until I purchased the property. And when I bought it, the ice was still in April. But our boathouse is not portrayed well enough in that picture because the land curves. If you could put up a map, everybody here knows that my land curves like this and my boathouse is going to be here, not here. Like it. Sure, I'll look at these. So our land is here.
We cannot see what you're pointing
Oh.
at.
Is that not improper there? Is
Yeah.
it not?
So what Kira's saying is, our boathouse is in here, this 134, I don't know where that number's come from, but the lost view from the dock, that's not accurate. That's a best guess at best.
It's not in front, the boathouse will not be in front of my cottage. My boathouse is going to the, if you want to call it, the north end of that portion, which the way in which the picture portrays, it would be like in the center of my frontage. It's not, it's actually going further, and I think that would classify as north. So I just wanted to verify that if we took my garage, I pulled it 5 feet this way, then it would comply.
The closest point of the garage, an exterior wall of the garage to the water is 30 meters. If any portion of that's closer than that, then it does not comply. And it seems to, based on the site plan that's been provided, the site plan is quite detailed. It does show the available building envelope. So no matter how you orient that building, it's going to be closer to the shore than the 30-meter setback requirement.
Okay, I'm just trying to juggle it in my head where I can actually place this based on, you know, obviously our prepared drawings that we've spent money on, and, you know, we've submitted them to you since January with nobody saying that they were not going to be approved. So, yes.
I'll speak to that. So in no point in our conversation did I guarantee any sort of approval. I've never done that to any sort of application. I only make a recommendation when I receive these sorts of applications. It is up to the committee to make a decision.
Understood.
It's a public process. So in no way, shape or form did I ever
I spoke to
confirm.
Sean and I agree with Sean.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm just trying to figure out this process, that's all.
Just keep it respectful. I would suggest, do any members of the committee have questions for Sean at this point in time? I would suggest that your best result from us today is probably deferral as opposed to refusal, which would give everyone an opportunity to, I've heard there's some willingness on the part of the neighbors to work together to try and come to some resolution. I think that there's more information that you could provide to Sean for clarity to try and, you know, bring things a little bit more into conformity. And I think that the committee, should we decide to defer, may require some environmental inspection work. I'm not sure. I would look to the committee to see what their expectations would be. I'd like to see some comments or some clarity on the navigational issues as well, and I'm not quite sure where that comes from. Comments from the committee? Member
Yeah.
Sharp.
No, I'm in agreement with you. I think it's quite obvious that we need to defer, and maybe what we can do is just review and provide a list of things that we would like to see. I don't know if that would be something that Sean could follow up with them afterwards, or if we would do that today, but a list of items that we would like some clarification on.
I think that we need to give Sean some direction about what our expectations are. Now, Member Richards, if you have a comment.
I would really hate to see a lot of money being spent at this. Because as far as the boathouse is concerned, and I don't know how other members of the committee feel, but it's very unlikely to move me on putting a boathouse that far into the lake. Regardless of what reports come in front of me, I would be very upset to see that in my view. The garage may be a different subject. But I do recognize that, you know, the neighbors are willing to speak with the applicant and perhaps an agreement can come forth. So deferral rather than refusal is acceptable to me.
Any thoughts on what we might require with respect to, you know, I guess I'm looking for some confirmation about what we might require to be done. I hear the point about you don't want to ask people to spend more money than is necessary, but what work might we need to see done before we can give an approval?
I think the garage and the boathouse are separate concerns. As far as the boathouse goes, I'd like to see a lot more neighbor support towards any resolution there. And like I said, the garage is separate. It's a separate issue that I think can be more easily worked on.
But it's all
But I'll look to
application.
Sean to see what his recommendations are there.
So just taking notes throughout the meeting, a couple of things I've noted, should the committee wish to defer. Things that we could seek clarification on are dimensions of structures being proposed, navigational impacts, the clarification of water depths at the boathouse location. That's the survey that I have. I'll circulate that to the committee, but just to include this in the resolution, just so it's on record.
Thoughts from other members of the committee about what might be required?
I think they need as much support as they've had objection. They have to flip a lot of people. So it goes from 8 meters to 19.5 meters is, I think, the rough measurements, right? I think that you got to come back to the 8 meters. And I know Quagma Lake well, and there's, you know, there's tracks, there's options, there's other things. If you really have to have a boathouse, then there's stuff you can do to satisfy everybody. That's how I feel.
Member Rogers.
I think, as I said at the start, I would think we need to have M&R comments. I think they should be at least approached and asked for comments on this this application.
To
think,
satisfy the navigational aspects of things.
well, it's navigational, but also the impact of surface water impact from the PPS. There needs to be some provincial policy statement. I keep forgetting. Some folks may not know what PPS stands for, but
Provincial policy
yeah,
statement.
yeah, that's what I just said. Provincial policy statement. So that kind of information, M&R are the right people to ask. I think if they have some concerns or not, they may not have any concerns, but I think we need to ask that question. I think we also need to give the opportunity to the applicants for an EIS. They may or may not want to do that. That's up to them. I'm not sure we're going to require it, but that may be a solution. In my mind, an EIS would solve some of my concerns on the application. And as I asked the solicitor, maybe the Lake Association folks might want to consider a scoped EIS just from their own perspective. That the problem with minor variance applications, it's a very short time notice time period. And we've gotten 10 letters of objection. We've had a lot of folks in very well reasoned and well written objections. I think we need to give folks a bit more time to decide how they want to approach this. There may be a professional planner that the residents want, the objectors want to retain and bring in. But the whole thing, if we defer now, is also that both parties should get together and talk about this. I think this can be resolved probably with a good discussion, but if we should be deferring with our expectations, and my expectations certainly of what I need before I would want to make a decision on this application.
Member Richards.
There's a difference between a boathouse being extended out that far and a dock being extended out that far. The dock, you know, there are M&R guidelines for the length of a dock, certainly, and those can be explored and presented back to us.
As I believe we have as well.
Yeah, but a boathouse on top of that dock is not avoidable with any report because it's about line of sight and view on a lake. So I would hate to see the money spent on getting all of those reports and opinions if we're not going to approve it based on sight alone.
Other comments? Member Sharp?
I would just add to that, I'm in agreement with Member Richards, but I think the applicant is stating that where the boathouse is actually going to be isn't going to impede sightlines. And we have that one really great picture that's showing it is, but that would, you know, if indeed it's not going to impede sightlines, I would like to see something done.
Prove that.
Yes.
Yeah, I know there's an issue about the amount of work and time and money that's required to do this. I do personally have some problems with the distance that the boathouse is out projecting out into the water and the problems that it may create. I'm not convinced that it won't create problems from a navigational or environmental perspective. I personally, you know, agree that MNRF needs to be contacted, and I also feel that a scope DIS is required. We need science and planning information in order for us to make a decision. Things that will confirm or not confirm, you know, some of the comments that have been made from both parties. You know, I recognize that there's a lot of opposition to this application. But some of the comments that have been made in that opposition need to be actually proven. You know, we had a very substantial discussion yesterday. There was a hell of a lot, excuse me, a lot more opposition to the application that we reviewed yesterday to what is being presented here today, and we still voted against it, you know, despite the opposition. So it's, to me, the answers need to be based on fact, scientific fact, planning fact, and emotion aside, even though apparently cottagers are all emotional. So are you, could you maybe tell us what you've got for a resolution?
Certainly. So the resolution right now is be it resolved that the Committee of Adjustment hereby defer application AHMV 00325 pending clarification / further review of dimensions of structures, navigational impacts, clarification of water depths at the boathouse location, MNRF being circulated, and a scoped EIS being prepared.
Comments on the draft resolution? Could I have a mover and a seconder for that resolution? Member Rogers and Member McLaren?
Moved by John Rogers, second by Fergus McLaren. Be it resolved that the Committee of Adjustment hereby defer application AHMV 00325 pending clarification / further review of dimensions of structures, navigational impacts, clarification of water depths at the boathouse location, MNRF circulation, and a scoped EIS being prepared.
All in favor? Or you wish to comment?
Yes. Just when you said water depth, just from the May to, can we just put some dates in there from the May period to the sort of May, June, July, August, September?
So, I mean, if the committee wishes, I could actually remove that condition because we do have that information with the dates shown on the plan.
Oh, that
that'll
you're going to circulate?
So,
Okay, great.
yeah.
Is the committee in agreement with that? Okay.
Okay, so I've struck that, the clarification of water depths at the boathouse location, but the others still remain.
Perfect. Thank you.
All in favor? Aye. Against? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Everyone's in favor. So thank you to you all for your time and your presentation information.
And Sean, just for clarification, is it just the applicants who are sort of notified about bringing this information
Could keep
forward?
conversation down to a dull roar or have it outside while we're continuing. Pardon me, you are? Yep. Thank you. Sorry. go ahead.
Just because there are so many people that are involved in this.
Yes.
Is there any notification that we do to sort of the other parties, or is it just to the applicants moving forward through this period?
When this matter comes back to the committee, we'll do a full circulation again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that takes us to the next application, which is for a minor variance on Kawagama Lake by Hawken. For construction of a two-story garage.
Well done.
Yes. She got practice yesterday.
So if you'd like to give your report on this application?
Yes, thank you. This property is located at 1027 Bass Lane. The lands are zoned shoreline residential 2 and designated waterfront in the official plan. The lands are approximately 0.68 acres in area with 35.9 meters of frontage on Kawagama Lake. Surrounding uses are generally shoreline residential, and the lands are currently developed with a dwelling and dock. The owner is proposing to construct a two-story garage. The lands are quite steep, sloping towards the water. The height of a building is determined along the front side, being the water side of the building. The steepness of the lot will therefore result in a height exceeding the maximum of 6 meters. The applicant is therefore seeking relief from the maximum height of an accessory structure. So that's from section 4.2.5 of the zoning bylaw. To increase the maximum height of an accessory structure from 6 meters to 6.15 meters for the purpose of constructing a two-story detached garage. Notice the application was posted on the property, posted on the township website, circulated to property owners within 60 meters of the subject lands, as well as to the county of Haliburton and to the Kawagama Lake Property Owners Association. No objections have been received, and staff are recommending approval, conditional on the garage being used only for storage purposes.
Questions for Sean or comments? Member McLaren, go ahead.
Just like the site plan, I thought I was at the wrong property. Site plan doesn't represent what's there. I don't know what value that is, if it's a problem or not. Or was I looking at the wrong site plan? No, I wasn't looking at the wrong site plan. They had a woodshed that's not noted, and there's an outhouse that's not noted, and the perimeter of the existing building isn't what's there. But from the pictures, I could tell I was at the right house. Right? So, for whatever that's worth.
Sorry, I'm just trying to open the site plan and take a look. Mm-hmm. I believe the shed is located where the garage is going, so it's going to be removed. But yeah, I do see some inconsistencies there.
So how do we deal with that? Defer?
It's up to the committee. The location of the garage, it does meet the minimum setback requirements. They will have to submit a site plan with building permit application, so we can certainly ask for a more detailed one at that time. The variance being requested is just for the height. So while it's unfortunate that wasn't caught earlier, I believe the committee is still in a position to approve it should they wish to, or they're certainly within their right to defer it pending a more accurate site plan.
Comments? Mr. Rogers?
I agree that the site plan is not in great detail, but it's also such a really minor variance. I don't think we need to defer this for a more detailed one. And I agree that that's building permit stage. You'll have the actual real measurements. It's really only a height issue that we're looking at. So I'm quite comfortable with proceeding.
Could you read the resolution that we've got?
Yep, so the resolution reads, be it resolved that the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves minor variance application AHMV 00925 submitted by Hawken to seek relief from section 4.2.5 of the zoning bylaw to increase the maximum height of an accessory structure from 6 meters to 6.15 meters for the purpose of constructing a 2-story detached garage, subject to the garage being used only for storage purposes.
Could I have a mover and a seconder for that? Member Sharp, Member Rogers. All in favor?
Aye.
That's carried. So the final item on the agenda is application by Holdcroft on Cushog Lake. To construct a 1,120 square foot dwelling.
Thank you. This property is located at 2760 Cushog Lake Road. The lands are zoned shoreline residential 1 and designated waterfront in the official plan. The property is approximately 1.38 acres in area with 78 meters of frontage on Cushog Lake. Surrounding uses are generally shoreline residential, and the lands are currently developed with a dwelling, shed, sleeping cabin, and a dock. The applicants are proposing to demolish the existing 800 square foot dwelling and construct a new 1,120 square foot dwelling on the same general footprint. It will be expanding towards the rear of the property, the new proposed footprint. Existing topographical constraints along with site infrastructure, including the driveway, do restrict the available building location for the proposed dwelling that would comply with the zoning bylaw. Therefore, the applicant is seeking the following relief, and that is from section 4.14.9I to increase the maximum gross floor area permitted from 0% to 40% for the purpose of constructing a 1,120 square foot dwelling. Notice of the application was posted on the property, posted on the township website, and circulated to property owners within 60 meters of the subject lands, as well as to the County of Haliburton and to the Cushog Lake Association. No objections have been received, and staff are recommending approval of the proposed minor variance with the following conditions. 1, that confirmation be provided from an Ontario land surveyor that the proposed dwelling is not located closer than 4.1 meters from the high water mark prior to any clearing, site alteration, or the issuance of a building permit. 2, that any on-site sewage system permits and reviews required by the township have been obtained and approved prior to the issuance of a building permit. And 3, that appropriate construction mitigation measures be implemented, including the erection and maintenance of silt fencing between the proposed building and the shoreline.
Questions or comments? Do we have anyone online who wishes to speak to the application?
Hello,
Good afternoon.
members of the council.
If you state your name, please, sir.
Yeah, my name is Brian Holdcroft. I'm one of the owners of the property.
And you have comments that you'd like to make?
No, I just want to thank everyone for their time and just kind of clarify what our objectives here. We're looking to take a small 2-bedroom cottage and make it a small 3-bedroom cottage to accommodate a family with myself, my wife, and 2 teenagers, a boy and a girl. And we've been the plans that we're putting in place. It's the existing cottage is a bit of a hodgepodge. Cottage has been put together over the years, is erected with 2x4s. I'm sure it's nothing that has not been seen before. When we're making the plan, we're trying to be as conscious as possible to the environment. We're looking to push it back a bit more from the high water mark, put it on piers as opposed to a foundation, and just not disturb the land as much as possible, which is the reason why we're there.
Any questions for Mr. Holcroft? Thank you, sir. What have you got for a resolution?
The resolution reads, be it resolved that the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves minor variance application AHMV 1125 to seek relief from section 4.14.91 to increase the maximum gross floor area permitted from 0% to 40% for the purpose of constructing a 1,120 square foot dwelling, subject to the following conditions. Confirmation being provided from an Ontario land surveyor that the proposed dwelling is not located closer than 4.1 meters from the high water mark prior to any clearing or site alteration or the issuance of a building permit. 2, that any on-site sewage system permits and reviews required by the township have been obtained and approved prior to the issuance of a building permit. And 3, that appropriate construction mitigation measures be implemented, including the erection and maintenance of silt fencing between the proposed building and the shoreline.
Could I have a mover and a seconder for that? Member McLaren, Member Richards. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, sir. Your application has been approved. There is a, I think 30-day appeal period, 20-day appeal period, so no construction until that time has passed.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, that's the business at hand for the day. Clarification of our next meeting date, would that be the 27th?
I believe so.
Is everyone available that day?
Or,
Yes, June 22nd.
yep, that is the scheduled date. Yep.
22nd?
Set 22nd. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, could I have a motion to adjourn? Member Sharp? Member McLaren? Thank you.